Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio, listener-supported radio, where no topic is taboo. We're brought to you by Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps, which is also listener-supported. So, guys, don't forget that donations keeps us on the air, keeps us censorship-free, and keeps us all out in the open and telling everything that we know as we know it to be. So today we're going to be talking to Dan Willis. He's coming back on my show for a second time, and it was a pleasure to have him once before. I'm looking forward to this interview with him. We were going to originally talk about Nazis in Antarctica, but we had a last-minute change of topic matter, and we're going to be discussing matrix of perception of the UFO reality instead. However, that's not to say we can't come back and touch on the other subject as well as the time and the conversation is flowing. So, Dan, how are you doing today?
Oh, good, Royce. Hey, great to be on the show. And hey, who says we're going to neglect the Nazis in Antarctica?
Like I said, we could probably cover both.
Absolutely. Well, it's all part of the big picture.
Well, yeah, the whole. Well, yeah, I can see that because I've noticed that a lot of things are linked together. I mean, a lot of your politics, your religion, your ancient astronauts, modern day ufology. When you get to investigating it far enough, it becomes a whole big woven tapestry that was once just little pieces here and there.
Yeah, it's information you won't hear on the mainstream media, that's for sure. So, yeah, I encourage everybody to support, the alternative media such as Freedom Slips, to keep information coming out from independent people that are not connected to, the main networks of television and whatnot. Because there's a lot that's not being told to the public.
Well, I know it's a true fact that whoever's paying the dollar can also say, "You talk, get no paycheck." So that's one thing about listener supported is you, the community, are doing it, and I don't know how a community could actually go about saying, "Well, we're not going to donate or support you if you talk about this subject." Because there'd be too many people, with a conflicting points of view, in other words.
Yeah. It's people like Amber Lyons at CNN, who was she won a number of journalistic awards, and she left CNN because they were telling her to put this information that wasn't the truth into her reporting. But there's a perception matrix going on, and that's a topic of today's show. Is there's this the world is you could say kind of trapped in this lie, and hey, I'm no authority. I'm just a regular guy like everybody else, and if it wasn't for a media company out of Hollywood that because I knew I was a top secret witness that testified in Washington, as well as being ex-ABC newsman, as well as a chief broadcast engineer for a radio station in San Diego.
What do you do for ABC, if you don't mind my asking?
What I mean for radio work?
Well, any kind of were you in the cameraman position? Were you a reporter, a journalist?
Oh, no. I wasn't a journalist or anything. I was actually the chief engineer for the most powerful FM station on the West Coast at the time in San Diego, KITT FM. I was assigned to be an ABC newsman, so I, sort of the head dishwasher and, do different things. So they gave me the news report. So we had two teletypes, one from United Press International, the other one from American Press, UPI, AP, and then rip off the news coming in that's being distributed to the different networks. And I'd read the news. So I always had an interest in how, where does this news come from? It comes from journalists, of course, that are out there attempting to validate stories and like the New York Times, it needs at least 3 different sources in order to validate it and get it on the air. But, as you research into this, you start to find that the distribution of all of the information to all of the major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, all those are all controlled through the Central Intelligence Agency that takes a keen interest, especially with the topic of having to do with anything with extraterrestrials or UFOs. And the reason being why that is such a high priority to make sure that, any stories that come out in that regard are either they kill the story, and I have a document that, the Disclosure Project was able to dig up that, as if, people don't know that the CIA controls the media, that, clarifies that they will go in and they will kill a story, modify the story, spin it, in other words, or, just completely alter the story in the interest of national security. And whenever the subject of UFOs or extraterrestrials come up, do they consistently do that? As I had experience of, being on CNN with that, being CBS did a special
So you
interview
yourself
with
have
me.
been censored.
Oh, well, I wouldn't say, I would say sanitized is the better word than censored. In other words, say if you're talking about something that's very important, let's say, for example, when CBS came down and did a special interview with me, Channel 2 Los Angeles, they sent a special assignment team. And I said, look, I'm not doing this interview with you guys unless I can say that we have these scientists. I'm only one of over 500 military witnesses, intelligence witnesses that are willing to testify under oath. And we have these scientists. We're in these deep black projects that had a solution to get off of nuclear oil and coal over 60 years ago. And I had them promise me that I could say we have these scientists willing to come forth in open congressional hearing that can prove that we have these technologies. They promised up and down. The lady, I guess she's never experienced anything like this before. She said, I'm sorry, we had to cut that part out. It was a short little sentence. It's not like they didn't have enough time to say it. But you'd think, like a solution that would avoid things like Fukushimas and Gulf oil spills and the pollutions that are happening in the cities with the coal. You think that would be some kind of an important news story, right?
Well, I would think so.
But she said, I'm sorry. She was almost in tears. She said, I'm sorry. I know I promised, but, the higher executives made me cut that part out. And what you find is that the higher executives are in mainstream media are, CIA, NSA operatives. In fact, one of the witnesses that joined me in Washington when we all went before the major media, we had 22 cameras in the back row on the National Press Club. Each one of us stated that, gave our testimony of what our involvement was in the military or intelligence agencies. And each one of us said that we were willing to, testify under oath before Congress, which means under the penalty of perjury, right? But what happened is the media across the board, sanitized it out in such a way as to give the impression that here's 500 people that includes, astronauts, generals, admirals, very high level ranking people, nothing to gain to, dealing with this stuff, are willing to go forth in an open congressional hearing and testify under oath and, under penalty of perjury. And they made it sound like the group wanted to say that, is there life on other planets? And that UFOs are real, and they want to have a congressional hearing on UFOs are real. But what was disclosed, if you'd like, I could play for the listeners who are not familiar with what happened on May 9th, 2001. I've got a little clip of just a sampling of 6 of the witnesses that talk about. The first one was John Callahan. He was head of investigations of the FAA during an administration of the Reagan administration, and this UFO that was like 5 times the size of a 747.
It's big.
You know, he had ground radar, military radar, computer printouts, all this stuff. But the CIA came in, swore everybody to secrecy. He says, "Well, you know why? You know," he says, "Well, you know, it's going to panic the public. We can't tell the public." But he came and they confiscated all the material, but he had backups and he brought it. And then, you know, nuclear launch officers with ICBMs being shut down, an alien base on the dark side of the moon being visually witnessed.
Read about that before.
Yeah, 57 different species already cataloged that the government, the secret government, I should say, differentiated from our legal constitutional government that we learned about in high school, right? NASA airbrushing the UFOs. If you want, I can go ahead and play a little.
Sure.
It's the longest clip I have. It's about 6 minutes, but I think the listeners would get an idea of some of the things that were disclosed to get an idea.
I think it sounds like a good idea.
All right, here we go.
The CIA, one of the CIA men told the people they were now sworn to secrecy, that this meeting never happened and this event never happened. When I asked him why, I thought it was probably just a stealth bomber at the time. He says, well, this is the first time that we have recorded radar data on a UFO, and these guys are going to get all excited, drooling over all this data. I said, well, you're going to tell the public about it? And he says, no, we don't tell the public about this. It would panic the public.
I was stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana, as a missile launch officer. I got a call from my security guard, primary security guard upstairs. I was downstairs 60 feet underground in a capsule, monitoring and controlling 10 nuclear-tipped Minuteman missiles. I got a call that morning that they were seeing strange lights flying in the sky. I got another call, and this time it was a more intense tone in the guard's voice. It was very clearly very frightened. He said there was a bright, glowing red object hovering outside the front gate. It was oval-shaped. He had all the other guards out there with their weapons drawn. My weapons started going down, one after the other. They went into a no-go condition, what we call a no-go condition. They were unlaunchable within minutes of having received that second phone call of a UFO hovering outside the front gate. We were informed that a similar incident happened at Echo Flight. They lost all 10 of their weapons, where UFOs were sighted over the launch facilities.
So we were taking pictures all the time for verification of nuclear disarmament. And there were some objects in those pictures that didn't belong there. The second prong to this whole thing is that a lot of people talk about conspiracies over shadow government. I'm willing to testify before Congress that these black operations do exist.
I was stationed at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. In 1965, I was loaned to the Lunar Orbiter Project at NASA on Langley Field. I went to the facility, and when I walked into the facility, there were scientists from all over the world. A airman second class was in the dark room at that time. About 30 minutes into the process, he said to me, in a very distressed way, by the way, we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon. And then he proceeded to put photographs down in front of me, and clearly in these photographs were structures, mushroom-shaped buildings, spherical buildings, and towers. And at that point, I was very concerned because I knew we were working on compartmentalized security. He had breached security, and I was actually frightened at that moment. I worked there for 3 more days, and I remember going home and naively thinking, I can't wait to hear about this on the evening news. And here it is, more than 30 years later, and I hope we hear about it tonight. And I will testify under oath before Congress that what I'm saying is the truth.
I was able to go into restricted areas, which this was. And this was an aerial photograph of the Earth, and the shadows of the craft, or whatever it was, But I realized at this point that it's very secret, that it was kept secret, because I asked him, what are you going to do with this piece of information? And he said, we always airbrush these out before we sell them to the public. And it was a picture of a UFO. Another incident, I knew someone in quarantine with the Apollo astronauts. He told me that the Apollo astronauts saw crap on the moon when we landed. And that is what he told me. And he also was afraid, he said that the astronauts are told to keep this quiet. They're not allowed to talk about it. So I do want to let you know that I worked out there for a number of years, and I ran into this. So it's not something everyone knows that works out there for a long time. My boss didn't know about it. It's very strange, because I don't know how they can do it, but they can let some people know about it and then others not. I'm willing to testify before Congress that what I'm saying is true.
That I was involved in situations where we actually did recoveries of crashed saucers, for lack of a better term, debris thereof. There were bodies that were involved with some of these crashes, also some were alive. While we were doing all this, we were telling the American public there was nothing to it. We were telling the world there was nothing to it. But the whole situation is, we've set back, we've told the American people that there's no such thing as UFOs. I've been involved where we have recovered these objects. We know them to be of extraterrestrials. I was the first person to go ahead and see that there were bodies on it. That would be the first of approximately 12 events. UFO crashes are not events that take place every day. They're rare. I know we're not alone in the universe. I know that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It's evidence that has been denied to the American people. I stand before you today in my almighty God, and I tell you this. If Congress calls me in, I stand here today prepared and ready to do just that. Governments must never lie to the people.
My question is to Clifford Stone. You said that you had seen aliens on a craft that had crashed. I wondered if you could describe what they looked like.
I could, but it would probably take a whole lot of time. The reason I state that, when I got out in 1989, we had cataloged 57 different species. You have individuals that look very much like you and myself that could walk among us and you wouldn't even notice the difference, except for some of the things that they might be able to go ahead, even in a dark room, and touch an object and go ahead and identify what color that object might be. They would have a heightened sense of smell, sight, hearing. The situation is that you had at least 3 types of the grays. You had some that were much taller than we were. The unique thing that I'd like to point out for the most part is that the entities that we did catalog were in fact humanoid beings, so to speak, not necessarily look humanoid or be bipedal such as we are. But apparently we got quite a few of the species out there that are humanoid in appearance.
Yeah, I think it's good to be able to, not just my voice saying it, that you actually hear the witnesses, speaking it. That was just a sampling of 6 of the testimonies of the 21 witnesses, of which I was one, which I felt my testimony was, kind of
meager,
significant compared to the 57 species and the alien base on the other side of the moon. I had a high-level top-secret clearance in communications in the Navy back in 1969 as a high-speed code operator, and I was getting a communication from a ship off of the coast of Alaska, a USNS ship, that the crew visually witnessed a saucer coming out of the ocean. It was about 70 feet in diameter, elliptical. It was glowing reddish orange, so like the air around it ionizes, I think, with these propulsion systems they use. And this is a time we were going to the moon, and that the radar operator caught it as it came out of the ocean, shot right up into space, and the blips determined it was going about 7,000 miles per hour. And this was a secret level priority message going to the Chief of Naval Operations in Washington, D.C., which I contacted the ONI, Office of Naval Intelligence, to see if I can get a document with it, but that was destroyed, unfortunately. Unlike the other witnesses, many of them, excuse me, like Captain Robert Salas. He had the supporting documentation of the event from the Office of Special Investigations of the Air Force, along with Commander Bethune, who was in the Navy, and his incident that he saw. Many of the people had supporting documentation to back up their testimony as well. But, some of the things that were, Dr. Greer had his life threatened, not to go before the National Press Club. Sarah McLennan, the famed White House correspondent, sponsored the event, who I thought it was kind of interesting that she said that George Bush Sr. had said to her, and Sarah, if the American people ever find out what we've done, they'd, hunt us down the road and lynch us, So apparently there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, and some of the things are, the technologies that we've already, one of the witnesses, Mark McCandish, he was a graphic illustrator for the industrial military complex, showing this diagram of what was called an alien reproduction vehicle. In other words, this was a 1950s flying saucer that was derived from studying the extraterrestrial technologies. And I have a really short little clip on that. But, these things could go. I sat down with him at the bar at the Hilton, Washington, and he knew I had a technical background, and he went over how the functioning of the craft worked, which was very interesting because it had a mercury vapor tube in the middle with a Tesla configuration with the capacitors along the bottom, and it had some type of camera operation where they could control this thing. And the mercury, once this thing fired up, it actually used a submarine battery in order to hit the starter button, and it would create this anti-gravity effect, which is kind of interesting because, the Nazis were all over this stuff with, stuff they were doing back in the 40s.
Back on the Antarctica?
Well, not there yet, but what happened was, they went all over the world looking for ancient occult knowledge. And, in India, the ancient Sanskrit text talks about the flying vehicles called the Virmatas, which use this mercury engine. And my own research
is describing.
Yeah, my own research, I found that two Nazi U-boats got sunk. And one up by Norway, another one looked like it was maybe going to Antarctica, kind of near the straits, near Australia. And one had 67 tons of mercury in these sealed glass containers. The other one had 33 tons. And in fact, one's causing an environmental issue up in Norway, is leaking. But that's a lot of thermometers,
More than I need in a lifetime.
I'll just play that. I think we're going to go to the break here pretty soon. But this is 20 seconds of Mark McCandish's testimony talking about the alien reproduction vehicles.
Personally witnessed 3 flying saucers at a very large hangar at Norton Air Force Base. The presentation that Brad talked about was for top military brass and certain congressional. But the fact that there were 3 discs at that exhibit, these discs were hovering off the floor without any visible means of support. They were referred to as alien reproduction vehicles.
Yeah, and beside that information, we also had proof of at least 2 presidential administrations that have been taken out of the loop, denied access. In fact, that's how the whole disclosure project came into being in the first place, is because the CIA director for Clinton was denied access because Clinton had interest in the UFO subject and had his director of Central Intelligence, James Woolsey, look into the matter. And here you think a CIA director would have a high enough security clearance, to gain access to anything. But apparently there's a rogue operation or a shadow government that's overseeing, controlling this, in which what we normally learned in high school about our legal constitutional government and all this is completely out of the loop, including, members of Congress, as I found out later. So here, I don't know how much longer we have until we go into the break, but
about 30 minutes.
About 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We're good then. Then I'd like to go into what the mainstream media did with that information to make it appear to sound. You can imagine the average guy sitting back having a beer with potato chips, listening to the 6 o'clock evening news. Here comes on CNN a little 2-minute clip that, oh, wow, these guys want to have a congressional hearing on the reality of UFOs. So long as they go along with the theme saying, we are not alone. These people want to go to Congress and have a congressional hearing to let us know that UFOs are real. With completely sanitizing all of the very hot information. Here's a little clip of what CNN did with some of that.
Life on other planets? Some former military and government personnel say they have proof there is. Elaine Quijano explains.
We've seen the photographs and heard the stories of what some say is evidence of UFOs. Now a group of scientists, former Air Force and FAA officials, is lending its voice to the argument that we are not alone. Dr. Stephen Greer heads up the Disclosure Project, a group that compiles information from people who say they've encountered extraterrestrial forms of life.
We can establish through this testimony that these objects of extraterrestrial origin have been tracked on radar going thousands of miles per hour, stopping and making right-hand turns.
Since 1993, Dr. Greer says he has videotaped testimony from more than 100 people about what they say are close encounters. People like retired Navy Commander pilot Graham Bethune, who believes he saw a UFO 50 years ago while flying to Newfoundland.
Then it appeared over to the right and moved out slowly and flew with us. It was still not at our altitude, but we could see the shape of it. It had a dome.
In addition, the Disclosure Project says it has documents supporting its case, including FAA records and CIA memos. What do members plan to do with their information? They hope Congress and President Bush take notice. They want to see congressional hearings into the matter, despite criticism from skeptics.
Those that don't want to believe you will never believe you anyway, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't change the truth.
A spokesperson for the Senate Science, Technology, and Space Committee says no congressional hearings are planned right now. Elaine Quijano,
CNN News.
Wow. That just sounded like they were putting the whole thing in a legit format.
Well, yeah, this is all part of the perception matrix. See, if you were just watching the news, your perception of that would be, there's a whole group wanting. They say, they believe that they
whole group
had
of troops
close
is what you think.
But let me just show you how his speech, which he did, Dr. Greer, in the first half hour, which, by the way, the National Press Club had about 250,000. It was the largest event in the history of online of the National Press Club, and 250,000 people were online waiting. But the event was electronically jammed on the internet for the first hour. Nobody could hear this, but now it's all over YouTube and all over the place, and many people are awake. Part of the global awakening is happening for those people who look for it, but you won't find it on mainstream news. So what they did was they looked through the whole speech, because through the whole speech there was all kinds of explosive stuff that if anybody heard that sitting back looking at the news, they say, whoa, what's this going on here? It's a nice Prozac type of thing, they just want to have a congressional hearing on the reality of UFOs when you start talking about
don't take you serious, in other words.
All the rest of the stuff. So I'd like to just play just a little bit. Watch what happens after Dr.
real quick, like before the chat room scrolls, I want to share something before you run that clip, because once it scrolls, I may lose it, in other words. Now, this isn't a question. This is just a comment that I thought you might find interesting. Merbailey in chat says, I urge immediate congressional action to reduce the dangers from secrecy about unidentified flying objects. And according to him, this statement was made by Rear Admiral Roscoe
Hillenkotter.
Yeah, Hillenkotter, the first CIA director himself that was recommending that. I thought you would find that interesting.
Yes, thank him for that. Yes, what Rear Admiral Hillenkotter, the first CIA director, interestingly enough, said, he urged congressional hearings regarding not the dangers of UFOs, but the dangers of secrecy of UFO regarding the subject of UFOs. And he knew something that was very profound, and he gave a warning that nobody heeded. And here we are today, and that secrecy, from all indications, Royce, has been breached. And they're using the national security system in order to maintain this secrecy. But as you can tell, it's not always for the good of all humanity on the planet. But I'd like to play just a little part that was omitted. This is only a minute long. I just want people to hear what Dr. Greer said that was cut off right after he says stopping and making right-hand turns.
We can establish through this testimony that these objects of extraterrestrial origin have been tracked on radar going thousands of miles per hour, stopping and making right-hand turns. That they use anti-gravity propulsion systems, which we have already figured out how they work in classified projects in the United States, Great Britain, and elsewhere. That these objects have landed on terra firma, at times have been disabled, and have been retrieved specifically by teams within the United States. That extraterrestrial life forms have been retrieved, and their vehicles have been taken and studied thoroughly for at least 50 years. We can prove through the testimony and documents that we will be presenting that this subject has been hidden from members of Congress and at least 2 presidential administrations, and that the Constitution of the United States has been subverted by the growing power of these classified projects, and that this is a danger to the national security.
And as the person in the chat room brought up, about Admiral Hillenkotter's warning about the dangers of secrecy, this is exactly what he was afraid of, is that our national security apparatus could be used in such a way that, you think about John F. Kennedy, before he was assassinated, he was talking about the dangers of secrecy and of secret societies, and it's just kind of interesting his comment about that. I got a little. We're going to do a lot of clips here today, I think.
Okay.
I have a little clip here. It's only a minute long on talking about the dangers of the secrecy and also secret societies, and about a conspiracy that uses infiltration to expand its sphere of influence.
Sounds
and here's
Hebrew to me.
I'm sorry, what, Royce?
I said that sounds Hebrew to me. Think back to the ancient Israelites and Abraham and the Pharaoh. Joseph, what they basically did was came in as friends and infiltrated Egypt, and then the next thing you know, they got a ruling position.
Secrecy works that way.
Yeah.
Here we go with John F. Kennedy.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed.
When President Kennedy, gave that speech, it was kind of interesting how, a president would just come out and start saying stuff like this,
Yeah, I was listening to that. I've heard this speech before. For some odd reason, it struck home like it never did before. Like, hey, this is an actual one of our American presidents who has been assassinated that is telling us, listen to the conspiracy theories. There's something to them. Right after, and then right before that, George Bush is talking about not listening to conspiracy theories. It's just mind-boggling, but that he would actually had the courage to stand up there and say that publicly.
Yeah, he was. He was only one of two presidents that were not affiliated with a secret society, the Freemasons, and I started to look into this, because curiously, my grandfather in Argentina was a 33rd degree Freemason, and his father was a 32nd degree, the Scottish Rite. And so, what happened is every president except for two, which was Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy, both were assassinated, and both were not Freemasons. And it's interesting that the assassin of Lincoln was John Wilkes Booth, as everybody knows. I don't know if everybody knows that he was a 33rd degree Freemason. And then John F. Kennedy, when he was assassinated, LBJ put together the Warren Commission, which was Chief Justice Earl Warren, who headed the committee, that he was a 33rd degree Freemason. Allen Dulles was leading the group, the CIA director, in which Kennedy fired for his suspicious activities that he was doing in the CIA. He was the longest-sitting CIA director. And also Gerald Ford, the future president, also another 33rd degree Freemason. And you have to understand the 33rd degree of the Freemasons is an honorary degree, or that the highest you can go on your own that anybody can do in the Freemasons is the 32nd degree. Once if you're selected, you have to be picked in order to be a 33rd degree. And, once you go through the indoctrination process of the secret society, you keep secrets really well, because you're given a blood oath to secrecy. You do not reveal. If you look back, with the Warren Commission, of course, all these 33-degree Freemasons all determined that, the lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, was the assassin of John F. Kennedy. But, if you look back at, there's different leaks coming through top secret documents that come out ever so often. Allen Dulles was during the Eisenhower administration was assigned as MJ1 to the newly created MJ12 group that superseded what was created during the Truman administration. And basically, with a secret executive order, they created basically all the cabal members. J. Edgar Hoover, who led the FBI for in 1932 to 72 or something like that. He was a 33rd degree Freemason. So all these people on the inside basically took control of this issue. And a counterintelligence agent, a leaked document that came out was called the Byrne Memo. That was because it was snatched out of the fire. When I used to work with a high-level security clearance, one of my tasks were to take, the top secret and secret messages and things and go down the hallway, and we had a big incinerator and throw them in there and burn them. Well, this one got snatched out of the fire. That's partially burned, but you can read it. And what it was MJ1. It was a Majestic 12 top secret memo going to the other Majestic members. In other words, Majestic 12 was a group that originally was set up, just for the people that don't know. I'm sure a lot of people that study this know this well. That was assigned to oversee the extraterrestrial issue, everything having to do with it. It was originally suggested by General Twining to President Truman to have a secret government within a government that would oversee this issue. And so what this top secret memo was saying is that Alan Dulles was saying to the other members that Lancer, which was a code word for JFK, was looking into our activities, and he says, this we must not allow. We need to make a decision on this in order for the continuance of our group. In other words, they had these subversive activities that were being hidden using our national security apparatus that JFK, before he was assassinated, Kennedy was going to end the Vietnam War. So I wouldn't have to go there. I ended up being shipped off to Vietnam, in combat action over there. And also he printed up about $4 billion of United States notes, not Federal Reserve notes. In other words, he wanted to end the Federal Reserve and get that out of us, which that whole thing that happened back in 1913 with the international bankers that were brought in through Roosevelt. He wanted to put an end to that. And so this memo was about a month before November 22nd, 1963, when he was assassinated. So this connection with the Freemasons I started digging into, and I keep finding more and more links, especially with members that have reached the 33rd degree level. In other words, a certain select group within the Freemasons. And you look back through the history of the Freemasons, that back in 1776, Adam Weishaupt, who was started the Bavarian Illuminati back there in Germany, based on the architectural design of Rothschild, which he used to infiltrate into the Freemasons. And it seems as though, all the connections with the Nazis and the Freemasons and the banking elite keeps popping up over and over again when you start digging into the subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll tell you something else that gets interesting to me while you're on the subject of Adam Weishaupt and all these connections. Is the simple fact that, Adam Weishaupt created the Bavarian Illuminati in the year 1776, which is the same year that America was born. Not only that, Adam Weishaupt was originally a Jesuit priest who is really nothing but the strong arm for the Vatican, or for the Catholic Mother Church. I think that figures into maybe a connection that maybe Freemasonry ain't per se what we think it to be. It's more of a Catholic front, in other words.
Yeah, and the Catholic Church figures into this picture too. It's kind of interesting, and the Nazis worked with the Catholic Church as well. It's all interesting, tied together, as though a lot of these different factors all had like possibly a common agenda, and they knew that working together in an orchestration, they could achieve the goals that they were wanting to achieve. In the plans that Rothschild drew up for Adam Weishaupt, one of the main things they wanted to do was to control the media. The media back then was just, starting with the newspapers. But the thing that Adam Weishaupt was saying is that, using the Freemasons gives a perfect cover, because the public, there's millions and millions of Freemasons on the planet, and they're good people. They basically, they say they want to make good men better, and they develop character in men, and so forth and so on. But I think what happens is that they're pretty much on the outer circle. It's not until you get to the highest degrees of the Freemasonry that there's an inner circle that the outer circle is completely unaware of.
Capstone. That's what I was thinking a minute ago when you're talking about the 33 steps. If you correlate those as an allegory to a pyramid, then the last one would be the 33rd pyramid, the capstone at the very top, which of course controls the rest of the entire pyramid, and that's why only so few get in.
Well, that's how governments, military, everything functions, is in this chain of command. As in the military, you take orders from your higher levels, and you don't question those orders. And so, their plan was to get their agents, so to speak, in the high levels of government and so forth. So, this gave them a perfect cover in order to continue with their plan. But, the perfect situation happened when 1947, when Truman, the whole, Truman was a 33rd degree Freemason, and before that, in the beginning of the OSS, which, General Wild Bill Donovan was sent over by Roosevelt, working with Winston Churchill, both of which were 33rd degree Freemasons, by the way, to the Tavistock Institute over in London in psychological warfare training. And what Donovan was saying is you wanted to create a matrix of perception that was basically all pervasive. In other words, everything that people perceive, you create this perception. And so the OSS, morphed into the CIA, which the National Security Act back in 1947 allowed, and Truman created it with no congressional oversight. So you have no oversight on an agency that can do anything under the guise of national security. So this worked as a perfect opportunity for, if you look back at the Nazis coming into the CIA and NSA, and NASA. The NSA wasn't created until 1952, I believe, a little bit later. But they came into how they came into the CIA was Alan Dulles, and it was part of the OSS, cut a deal with Reinhard Gehlen, head of Nazi intelligence. They brought 3,000 Nazi spies into the CIA. Now, the Nazis had this plan. We were taught in school that at the end of World War II, there was a ticker tape parade, and it was victory, and the Americans won the war. And the whole thing with bringing us into the war in World War II, they found out they decoded the messages, thousands of messages, where they knew way in advance that, the Japanese were going to attack Pearl Harbor. But Roosevelt went ahead and allowed it to happen, but he got he allowed the old ships to hang out there in Pearl Harbor and moved all the carriers out and the important ships out of there. And that allowed them to get into the war. But at the end of the war, we victoriously won over Germany, right? But all of the top scientists of Project Paperclip, which they brought in, Werner von Braun and all the rest of the Nazi scientists, the top scientists didn't come over. They were missing, along with 250,000 Nazis, along with over 100 of the most advanced U-boats. And that was because in 1938 to 1943, the Nazis built an underground base in Antarctica. Here we go. We finally made it.
Yeah, but we're fixing to have break music interrupt you any minute.
Well, at least we made it to the Nazi base in Antarctica. So this was called Base 211, and they moved many of their flying disc factories, which they had in Germany, according to a secret document that Colonel Wendell Stevens witnessed. Just in time.
Yeah. Folks, we're going to carry this on a little bit later on when the break time music is over. Dan, this has been fascinating so far. I can't wait to hear the rest. Now, we're returning with Dan Brown, and before we get involved into the section about the Nazis in the Antarctic or at the South Pole, I'd like to give him a chance to mention his website, because I thought about it a few times during the first half of the show, but he was so interesting to listen to, I just did not want to interrupt him any more than I absolutely had to mention it. And when I did do it, it was to ask a question or make a comment that was brief and short, and now I got a chance to just come out and tell him. So, Dan, why don't you give us your URL?
Oh, okay. I'm just one of the top secret witnesses. I'm not an article writer or have any special information that anybody else can't research and find out. But this media company out of Hollywood wanted me to write an article on media control. So I wrote this article called "Who Controls the Agreed Upon Reality Through the Mainstream Media and Why They Fear Disclosing the Extraterrestrial Reality." And you can read the article, which I converted to an online format, which I'm continually expanding, just for my own education, is www.thewebmatrix.net. This is when you get into this stuff, science fiction is fascinating to people because it kind of stimulates the imagination. Everybody's going to work, doing their 9-to-5 job, and just taking care of bills and doing all this stuff. And, people like to have a break sometime going to fantasy and science fiction. Well, I'll tell you what, the truth that's been hidden trumps anything that is in any kind of science fiction movie. Anything you've seen in Star Trek, by the way, Gene Roddenberry was a 33rd degree Freemason. You find all the people that have been involved with any movies having to do with extraterrestrials, UFOs, or the moon are all Freemasons for the most part. So it's kind of interesting.
Was George Lucas also a Freemason, you think?
On the webmatrix.net, I have a list of what I've been able to find. Now, I haven't been able to, because of my resources, I can't go in. I try to look for multiple sources of references to things, but I have no way of verifying. I'm just trying to get like a broad picture of trying to see what I guess the best way to call it is indicators that point to this this puzzle. It's kind of like a mosaic of little bits and pieces, like top secret documents leaking, witnesses, whistleblowers coming out saying things, different events, who is who doing what. When you start piecing all the events and people together and the witness testimonies, it starts to form a picture. And you know, the picture, as you dig into it, you keep going, oh my God, you know, and then you dig in deeper and you say, oh my God, and you keep going deeper. You know, it's like a rabbit hole. You keep finding out more and more, and it's not like, you know, out of somebody's imagination. I mean, this stuff is historical. The thing is that what happened going back to Antarctica and the Nazis and everything is that back in 1946, the Rockefeller Foundation, along with the Carnegie Corporation, actually went into the history books that the children read in school and rewrote the entire history of what happened, or sanitized it in certain ways to give a certain perception of what happened at the end of World War II. Because what happened at the end of World War II was a lot different than what we were taught in school, I'll tell you. What happened was the Nazis had what was called Weltanschauungskrieg, which means worldview warfare. They had a fallback plan. They weren't planning on losing the war. They had secret underground bases. They basically, many of them escaped to Antarctica and Argentina, as many people know, and the surrounding areas. And back in 1944, Himmler had his head, Otto Skorsky, I think that's the right way to pronounce his name, head Nazi commando, go into the southern of France, which was based on the research work of Otto Rahn, trying to find the Holy Grail. And what happened was they discovered the treasure in on the side of this mountain. You're breathing a bit close to the mic, by the way. I just want to give you a heads up.
There, I moved it a little bit. Is that better?
Oh, that's much better. Yeah. My brother does the same thing when he's on his show. I hear him. He's like, it sounds like Darth Vader, you know.
I've been told that before with my emphysema. Probably heard the tubing from the oxygen.
So what happened was, Royce, is that they got this treasure, which was huge amounts of gold and treasures and priceless things of ancient scrolls and things of that, you know, the Knights of Templar hid away, that was based on the teachings back from the ancient mystery schools of Egypt, you know, in the time of Akhenaten, which is what the Freemasons and the Rosicrucians, which, you know, I've been in the Rosicrucian order since '76. I've been through their teachings. They teach, you know, the aspects of the time-space matrix we're in and consciousness and all that. And the Nazis were all over that. They really wanted to. They were very much thinking out of the box in their approach on everything. And so in Operation Eagle Flight, you know, the Nazis pillaged all kinds of things and had huge amounts of gold, enormous wealth, in which they brought over in Operation Eagle Flight. And Bormann, he set up 750 front corporations for the Nazis all over the world. So what happens is these corporations are all tied into this too, and they wouldn't have been able to do this unless they had the ties with the banking elite, which Allen Dulles was connected with the German bank when, you know, Hitler first came into power back in 1933. So all this time, the banking elite was behind the rise of the Nazis. And so what happened was this plan called Weltanschauungskrieg, worldview warfare, was to create this matrix of perception where they planned on infiltrating into the United States And what a perfect avenue set up by Allen Dulles with General Reinhard Gehlen to get the Nazis. They used to say there was two CIAs. One was hunting down Nazis, and the other one was recruiting them. And recently released FBI documents show that the FBI was well aware of Hitler's presence in Argentina, and that he did not die in the bunker. And there's more and more evidence and more proof of that coming out all the time. And actually, Joseph Stalin, as the Soviets came in and took over Berlin, and they quickly grabbed the bodies supposedly of Hitler and Eva Braun, and whisked it away, and they allowed a forensic specialist years later to do a DNA analysis on it, and it wasn't even a man, it was a woman, a young woman's skull, and the DNA didn't match at all. But, Joseph Stalin, guess what, was a 33rd degree Freemason. Interesting, huh? So, and the man who was hiding the evidence, they had all these leads and things that Hitler escaped. But J. Edgar Hoover, a 33rd degree Freemason, knew of his presence down there, and they purposely, didn't bother to investigate anything. So he escaped to a little Bavarian chateau they had made for him at the foothills of the foothills of the Andes in Argentina, and lived the rest of his life there. But what they planned on is going into the United States and creating this matrix of perception in order to hide their operations. Now, they had all kinds of secret operations going on. That one of them was the Die Glock, or the Bell project, which was using these spinning rotational, once again, plasma fields of mercury, from what I understand, that created these anti-gravity and also warp time and space in a way. The Nazis were doing this way back in they started all this stuff back in 1919 with the girls of the Virile, which are these girls with super long hair, which believe their hair acts as an antenna. And Maria Orsic was receiving this communication from the Albarian constellation, about 65 light years from Earth, and it was in an ancient Sumerian script. And so the people of the Black Sun Society and the Thule Society got together and decoded this message, and it gave instructions for a flying machine that could warp time around it. And Professor Schumann of the University of Munich in Germany looked at these instructions and saw that there was viable physics in it, and they actually started producing these anti-gravity craft. And so back in this is 1919, and by 1934, I believe, they had the first actual working model. And I believe in 1936 there was a Roswell kind of situation that happened in the Black Forest of Germany, where an ETV, extraterrestrial vehicle, crashed in the Black Forest, and they reverse engineered. And from many people believe that, and indications, and even some of the leaked documents from Edward Snowden, it appears that they cut a deal with the Nazis for a technology exchange, similar to what Eisenhower did back in 1954 with the Grenada Treaty, and that they had these advanced craft. In fact, Colonel Wendell Stevens saw the document, as I said earlier, that they had 9 disc factories in Germany. The 9th was destroyed, but 8 of them were relocated to New Schwabenland, in other words, the Antarctic base. Some to a place in Brazil in the jungle somewhere, and the other one up in Norway. And they had an underground base already set up in Norway. And when let's see, under President Truman, Secretary of Defense James Forrestal, he was part of the Majestic 12 group. He signed Admiral Byrd, a 33rd degree Freemason, he'd come in, to go down to, not everybody can be a 33rd degree Freemason. I'm just bringing that up, so, he was assigned with a whole military armada, which was an aircraft carrier with a destroyer, a submarine, a full military armada to go down to the Antarctic, possibly to destroy the Nazi base. This was in 1946, I believe, and or acquire the technology that they were doing. So I think what happened is you had a split between what appears anyway, that we had a split between our legal government and a shadow government that was working with the Nazis and the banking elite and the Masons and all this. And they set up these facilities down there because out of the oceans of Antarctic came these saucers that were attacking Admiral Byrd's fleet. And a Chilean newspaper leaked the story that, the sailors were spilling the beans on us, saying that they were coming in and these discs were coming out of the ocean like demons, firing laser weapons and things at them, spitting fire, they said. And that Admiral Byrd later and Admiral Byrd said, these have the ability to fly from pole to pole from tremendous speed. But of course, back when Admiral Byrd returned, he was debriefed, and being a 33rd Freemason, you don't divulge any secrets either. And so people really don't know whatever happened. I know that back in the 50s, they tried nuking Antarctica a couple of times. So what appears is, this goes off in so many different directions. I don't mean to jump all over the place, but it's all interrelated and connected, is that the Nazis were using through South America with the drug cartels. They were bringing in they already had a huge amount of money. And even Eisenhower went down to Argentina, and there's a picture of him in this big hotel when he was down there visiting. Why would the president go down to Argentina, right? So they had these secret underground facilities where they were still developing these technologies. And so huge amounts of money was being funded. And so when the CIA was created, we have these black projects in which, trillions of dollars have been put into these things. And as Ben Rich, head of Lockheed Skunk Works in 93, said, anything you can imagine, we already know how to do. We found an error in the equations. We know we can travel to the stars, and it won't take a lifetime to do it. In other words, they understood how to warp time and space. And that these technologies in the Black Project, it would take an act of God in order to ever get them to come out and benefit humanity. So this back to the worldview warfare, or the Welkenschallenzkrieg. What happened was, in the United States, with the help of their banking elite, which ties into the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan, all these guys, who back in like J.P. Morgan and Rockefeller, and it was Prescott Bush, George Bush's daddy, tried to do a Nazi coup of the American government and set up concentration camps and get rid of undesirables and everything. And they brought in General Smedley Butler, who was a Marine Corps hero during World War I, and he basically infiltrated the plot, exposed it. And so we didn't have a Nazi government back in 1933. They later wrote a book called War is a Racket, and saying that, there's a small group of people make a huge amount of money at the cost of many lives. And, the story is still the same today.
Yeah, it is. The 1% getting richer while everybody else starves. And people are dying for it.
starts with a false flag event. The Gulf of Tonkin was a false flag event. The Pearl Harbor, even they allowed that to happen. The situation with I won't go into 9/11, but anyway,
that's a long one in itself.
Every war starts with a false flag event. In fact, during Kennedy administration, with Operation Northwood, where the Joint Chiefs of Staff proposed to shoot down American civilians in an aircraft going near Cuba in order to evoke a war with Cuba. So these things have been in the mindset of those that want to create a provocateur type of situation, and it makes you wonder about Ukraine and North Korea nowadays, with the media, Russia did it, oh, North Korea did it, and all these, but there's contradictory evidence, surfacing and leaking here and there about the whole thing. But anyway, so back to the when the CIA was created, Allen Dulles created 1950 Operation Mockingbird, which basically started to control all the mainstream media. And in 1951, the CIA liaisons and Air Force, which was integrated with the Air Force, is also on this whole issue. They started controlling all the movie scripts, anything having to do with extraterrestrials. In fact, the first one was The Day the Earth Stood Still. The script was basically worded and created in such a way as to create a certain perception. And you have to understand that the very beginnings of our intelligence agencies, with the OSS, started with the General Donovan going into training with the Tavistock in London, which actually superseded our sovereignty from England with the way they did this whole thing. And with Operation Mockingbird and the control of the media and let's see, we have and then the Rockefellers also rewriting the textbook. So you have our education system being infiltrated by the Rockefellers rewriting the official history. You have Operation Mockingbird controlling the mainstream media of what people perceive, which is tied in, by the way, with the Tavistock Institute, with billions of dollars of thousands of think tanks that what they do is they psychologically engineer consent. And then you have Hollywood with the liaisons coming in, and you can imagine all the evil alien movies that we've seen of these aliens coming in wanting to take over Earth and kill us all, for the planet. Although you and I, Royce, are having this conversation, the extraterrestrials, all I've seen them do is basically shut down our nukes. When I had lunch with Jaime Maussan in Washington. He invited me to go to Mexico for a large presentation, and he was showing these Swedish scientists that were down in Mexico, and this volcano down in Mexico was about ready to erupt. They had all the instruments there, and the thing was about ready to blow, and then out of the sky comes and they got this all on camera, comes a UFO, shoots down in the volcano, right? And all of a sudden the whole volcano just calms down, and then the UFO comes out of the volcano, shoots back where it came from. So the ability of these craft, just like my witness testimony of coming out of the ocean. By the way, most of Soviet intelligence, naval intelligence, most of the UFOs coming and leaving Earth are coming in and out of our oceans. So there's a good bet that these ETs are maybe have bases under ocean. What a perfect place to hide, huh? Where nobody could see, because these guys can go right through the material realm that we feel is solid. The ETs can go through walls, they can go through mountains, they can go into volcanoes. They have technology that's, imagine giving a cell phone to an Aborigine and have them trying to figure it out, it's a whole nother ball game. So this perception matrix, ever since, when I was a kid, I was born back in 49. I used to love the movies in the 50s about extraterrestrials. It kind of sparked your imagination of possibilities. I had no idea that while I'm watching a science fiction movie, the real thing is actually going on, in these black projects. And today we have trillions of dollars going into these black projects that have no congressional oversight. Presidents and CIA directors are denied access. When I toured across the country with Dr. Greer, we went to all the major cities since the mainstream media was sanitizing it out. We were trying to get a grassroots movement to get people to write their members of Congress, right? And so I participated in Colorado, San Diego, LA, San Francisco, Portland, up and down around the coast. We rented these huge halls. We showed I met with about 24 senators in Congress on Capitol Hill in teams. All the witnesses broke up in teams, and we presented them 4 hours of executive briefing video of this witness testimony, and along with a 500-page briefing document. But it's a hot potato. Nobody wants to
touch it,
jeopardize their job.
Yeah.
So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm just rambling on. Go ahead, Royce. I'm sorry.
I was listening to you earlier talk about how you've not seen the UFOs do anything hostile, and I've made the same perception myself. I mean, if you look at the fact that if you go by the church's figures, they've had 6,000 years that Earthlings have been here to attack us. You go by academia, they've had much, much longer. They've had, 14 billion years to attack us in? I'd have to ask, what are they waiting for? I mean, I'm ready to go to lunch here pretty soon. You going to get it over with before it's lunchtime?
Yeah, I think they, my guess is they've been here before the human race on this planet. And that they're, there's, and we may even be a genetic engineering of them. If you look back at the mystery schools of Egypt during the time of Akhenaten, if you look at the skull of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, and they have these huge elongated skulls, not like average Joe today.
That's interesting. You should say that. Because there was a skull that was checked out recently. It was in the news or on Facebook or somewhere that they claimed that this was not a human skull. I mean, all the claims that were made about using boards to bind the head to make that shape, they said this could not have been the case because even if they did
to write it off.
Yeah, because if they did do it the way he said with the boards, that did not account for the mass of the actual material of the skull itself.
A minimum of 30% larger. I mean, that head goes way back. And if you look at, and I've got some examples on the webmatrix.net, you can see that. But Akhenaten was a believer of the one God, and the religious groups back there that wanted to believe in the multi-gods, they basically overthrew him. But he was the during the time of the mystery schools. This is about 3000 BC. So the extraterrestrials have. I've had a couple of experiences with with extraterrestrials, with situations where I was traveling with my brother Willie. I think he's on the show once in a while, Willie Whitefeather. I was working for about 13 years in Naval Electronic Engineering Center on military satellite communications, and I decided I had enough of that, and I took a vacation, and we were going up to see a 107-year-old Hopi Indian chief up in Oribe, up in Four Corners area, and coming out of Gila Bend, going up this mountain road near Prescott. It was late at night. I've been driving for hours. I was pretty tired. At night, Willie got out and was stretching. Next thing I know, my door, the truck flies open. He yanks me out on the road saying, look, 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 like that, and he points up, and he must have seen it. We were way up on the mountain, so he must have seen it was coming out of Mexico, and it made a right angle turn, went about 100 feet over the top of us, a circular glowing disc that was white with a greenish hue to it, the only way I describe it. And the thing just, hauled butt. So, it could have been a military secret project. It could have been made in USA, or it could have been an ETV, extraterrestrial. I don't know, but that was the first time I ever seen one that close. I've seen them in the skies. In fact, I was. This is kind of sounds probably pretty out there, but I was camping in the mountains outside of Laguna with a girlfriend. We kind of went way off the beaten path on the top of a mountain, and we were setting up camp. And I was just out there enjoying the forest, and I don't know how to describe it, but it felt like an intelligence or something of clear, coherent thought. Of great intensity was coming out of the sky is the only way I could describe it. It was so intense that I actually reached my hand out to the sky, and said, is somebody out there? Like that. And all of a sudden, one of the stars, what appeared to be a star, started glowing and scintillating different colors around it and bobbing up and down as in a yes. And I called a girlfriend over. I said, you see what I'm seeing? And she started freaking out a bit. And I was kind of fascinated. I wanted to see if apparently there was some kind of connection. We have the SETI program, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Some call it a silly effort to investigate. Using the electromagnetic spectrum, they don't have CB radios, hey, rubber duck, we're coming in Earth, So you can imagine a civilization that's like thousands or millions of years in advance. They understand the matrix of time and space, obviously they do, and they understand consciousness, which is instantaneous anywhere, and that would be the mode which they would be able to communicate on. And, Dr. Greer does that with the SETI teams using what he calls the CE5 protocols, where they actually do what the CIA does regularly, called remote viewing. You've heard of the men as stare at goats and all the other stuff that the CIA does, behind the scenes. It's not real public. But you can actually vector the craft in, and I've been on them a couple of expeditions in Colorado and Joshua Tree and Mount Shasta, where the ships would come in and we'd use these lasers, and we'd have magnetometers set up. And one time up in Colorado, we had one that was materializing, and all the magnetometers, it was like nothing nowhere, and all the magnetometers, there was lightning in the background, far, far away, and once in a while it would go, the lightning would hit, and when a lightning strikes, there's a magnetic pulse that comes out, and the magnetometers would go blip like that. And we wait a couple of minutes, and another lightning strike, and the magnetometers would go blip. Well, as this craft came in, all the magnetometers were going blip, 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 like that, because there's an intense magnetic field that these crafts create. Anyway, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent. Let's get back to the perception matrix.
Well, before we do, there was a question earlier, and I almost lost it. Sure. I copy and pasted it to the document, so I wouldn't. But Olive was asking, what about Operation High Jump G-Force? And I've never heard of that, but maybe you have.
I'm only familiar with Operation High Jump, which was, of course, Admiral Byrd, going down there.
Oh, wait, we got a caller. Go ahead and just make it short so we can tell the caller when to speak.
Oh, great.
Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to tell your guest a little while ago he was talking about the underwater alien bases and stuff, and me and you had previously talked about it too, and I just wanted to tell him what my thoughts on the matter was back when me and you discussed it. This is James, by the way. My thoughts on the matter. My thoughts on the matter was that it could be related to the Atlantis story. It made sense to me that an alien civilization that wanted to avoid detection or whatever, or just be left alone and not have to worry about most of the natural disasters like tornadoes and volcanoes and what have you, would build a civilization, an infrastructure on the surface of the earth, and then intentionally sink it because my thought was that it would be easier to do that than it would be to build the infrastructure 2,000 miles underneath or 2,000 feet below the surface of the ocean. So my thought on the matter was that the Atlantis story about the sinking of Atlantis and stuff was directly related to the ancient alien, or to the alien bases, and that my personal opinion isn't that it was an accident or something. It was that they built their civilization and then intentionally sank it, because that would make a lot of sense. You wouldn't have to worry about floods. You wouldn't have to worry about tornadoes. You wouldn't have to worry about volcanoes. You wouldn't have to worry about any bad weather whatsoever, like storms or whatever. You'd have relative safety under the ocean. The only thing you'd really have to worry about is earthquakes under the ocean. But if you locate your city or whatever civilization in an area that it does not have very many earthquakes, like there's no tectonic plates shifting in that particular area or whatever, you'd have pretty much relative safety from earthquakes as well. But anyway, me and Royce discussed this probably 6 or 8 months ago, and I had that thought one day that that the story of Atlantis and the submerged cities and stuff may correlate with the ancient aliens, because they may have sank their city intentionally. They may have built their city on the surface and then sank it intentionally.
Oh, well, thanks for
Did
your
I
input.
lose you?
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Oh, thank you for your question. All we can do is speculate on this type of thing. We can't even probably comprehend some of the technologies these advanced civilizations have. But connection with Atlantis is very profound, in that the Nazis believe they descended from Atlantis and they were the master race, the rule and everything. And in fact, that was the reason why, one of the reasons, I'm sure, that they picked Antarctica, because they believe that Antarctica, in a prior pole shift, was Atlantis. And they've discovered pyramids down there in Antarctica, and as well as in the Bermuda Triangle. There's a glassy pyramid down there that I met with Dr. Ray Brown, who was dived into it when the sand shifted and went into the chamber inside the pyramid and retrieved this quartz crystal specially formatted sphere that he was exhibiting. But with Atlantis and the underground cities, that was the thing they were looking for, the Nazis. They were looking for this ancient occult knowledge, especially tied in with Atlantis. So in Antarctica, they have these heated by volcanic lakes and things, these huge underground caverns. So, it's very well possible that they have some type of operation going down there. There was a Russian documentary Back in the 70s when I was a broadcast engineer, the National Science Foundation wanted me to work down in Antarctica for a year in isolation, being the radio operator between the supply ship that was supplying the scientists down there. They had about 17 different countries, the different scientists that they said, at least the cover story probably, that they were studying penguins and why penguins' blood don't freeze, possibly to use it with humans and military application. But according to the Russian documentary, most of the personnel down there are related to the intelligence communities, the CIA, NSA, military intelligence, working down there. And what another interesting element was, I was researching this, and that this astrophysicist Kep Thorne postulated with his formulas and everything that there's wormholes, that one's near Alaska, which is where my testimony report, the UFO coming out of the ocean, was shooting up into space right near Alaska, and the other wormhole is near Antarctica. And so they believe they use these wormholes as sort of like a jump portal to go from one star system into the next. So there's a whole connection with Atlantis and the occult knowledge with the Nazis and these wormholes and everything. And all we can do is kind of piece the pieces together and try to see what the bigger mosaic of the whole picture is. But yeah, it seems to be all tied together.
Yeah. One thing I find interesting about Antarctica is that no single country has laid claim to it. I mean, there's it's various countries like the United States and Russia and other countries like China or whatever. They all stake out a claim there and put a base on it, but nobody's actually declared Antarctica as part of their own country. The various countries go out and stake off some ground and put a base on it, but nobody's actually declared it as part of their country. So that's kind of interesting about Antarctica. But another thing I got to thinking about when he was talking about the races and stuff, but there was a lady, and I believe her name was Helena Blavatsky or something like that.
That's right. She led the Theosophical Society. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Wasn't the Nazi ideology? It's been a long time since I researched any of this, but wasn't the Nazi ideology about the master race and stuff? Didn't it come from a book or something that she had written about 5 root races or something like that?
Yeah, that was right, James. Sorry.
It was actually by a Rosicrucian that Lytton. It was called The Coming Race. You can actually get it on Amazon on a Kindle edition, which I downloaded. I was kind of curious. I wanted to read it because Hitler was fascinated with that book because it talked about a race that lived in the earth. And the whole story about Admiral Byrd going into the center of the earth and that. Into Agartha, and a whole civilization, advanced civilization that's living inside the earth because there's openings on the poles. My God, we live in this false creation perception matrix that there are so many mysteries, I believe, that are being withheld from mankind that we don't have really an inkling of what's going on around us.
Oh, I can agree with that. Yeah.
All we can do is kind of piece the little pieces of the puzzle and look for indications that kind of give you a larger picture, because nobody can claim to be I don't trust anybody that says they understand it all and they have the answer, because the whole thing is so compartmentalized in secrecy that all you can do is kind of look for all the little clues that slip out. My mother used to tell me there's an old Argentine saying that the devil always forgets to put the lid on the cookie jar. And so we have all these little cookie jar lids, of all these little leaks, like in the movie The Matrix, where you have this this blue pill reality, but ever so often the blue pill reality, you have these little glitches that telltale that this is a fabricated reality that we've been born into. And that's what the Nazis had planned to do. They planned through generations over time to be indoctrinated in such a way as to create this matrix of perception where, this goes into science as well. For over a decade after the National Press Club, with my science background, I volunteered to be one of 6 technical advisors with Dr. Greer's corporation called Advanced Energy Research Organization, where we had a database of about 300 inventors since the Bush administration denied a congressional hearing to bring the witness scientists forth to prove that in these black projects we've got anti-gravity, anything you can imagine. Amazing, and this breakaway civilization that across the board has technology. So I met with I flew down to the Dominican Republic, to Virginia, Idaho, all over the place, meeting with these scientists and with Professor Leuter, vetting these technologies that claim to be over unity or pull energy from the vacuum of space in the zero-point field. And so many of them I've talked to scientists that had their labs cleaned out with SWAT teams coming in. Many of them were given national security orders, which is basically issued from the National U.S. Patent Office through the national security apparatus. It was just recently exposed that there's been a secret program installed in the patent office that anybody comes up with any solution to oil, nuclear, or coal, or any kind of anti-gravity or any kind of free energy type device, that they automatically get issued one of these secrecy orders where you can't share this with anybody. Anybody you shared it with, you got to give them their name. And one of the inventors actually sent me a copy of it, and I put it up on the webmatrix.net. You can see it. And so over 5,100 of these, I'm sure there's even more, solutions to the world have been suppressed by the same entities that keep the UFO extraterrestrial issue suppressed from the public.
Since you seem to be deeper involved into the research and with the people than I am, is it your opinion that the aliens are giving us technology, or like they're working with us to explain their technology to us, or are they just giving us a ray gun and saying figure it out?
Well, again, my opinion is just based on speculation. I try to base everything when I say what I know for a fact, based on actually knowing witnesses and documentation that has come out or things I personally witnessed firsthand, versus things that are the indications of is that. I'm sorry. Could you rephrase your question one more time? Oh, it's on so many different tangents.
Yeah. My question was, in your opinion, is the aliens working together with us and explaining their technology to us, or are they just giving us something like a ray gun and saying, "Here, figure out how it works"?
Yeah, so great. Well, what it appears is that, back in the 30s, the Nazis had a technology exchange program with the extraterrestrials. And in 1954, they did it with the U.S. government about 21 years later. And it's kind of interesting that in one abduction case, you've heard of the Betty Barney Hill case that happened back in the late 60s, was that under hypnosis, Barney, when he was on board with the Zeta Reticulans, And Betty saw the star map, which they were able to recreate, and actually from another angle, from 3D, it actually looked like it was one of the paths going to the star system of Zeta Reticuli, that Barney saw a evil-eyed Nazi on board. So, it's kind of interesting that, it seems there's these paramilitary operations, and I've met with many people, well, I don't know, maybe about 2 or 3, that have been involved with mill lab situations, military abductions. In other words, what they call stagecraft, from what I understand, where people get abducted, and for all practical purposes, they see aliens, or what's sometimes referred to as programmed life forms, and there'll be military personnel in the background. And so there appears to be a joint military alien agenda that's going on. And there's also, you have to imagine, with 57 different species, there are a lot of different agendas going on. But for the most part, these beings, and according to a lot of top secret documents, these beings are not hostile. I don't know about all of them, but the indications are that there's some very, very advanced races that are hopefully looking after us, because their technology probably trumps some of the ones that aren't, friendly. Who knows? But I think they definitely were having, they wanted technologies. The first group that met with Eisenhower wanted us to relinquish our nuclear weapons, but the generals and everybody didn't want that. And what they wanted to do was help us with our spiritual evolution, something which we could really use in helping us. But they wanted advanced technology, because they felt like if we had that advanced technology, we would misuse it and use it against each other and kill ourselves with it. I think what they're waiting for is that there's a global awakening happening right now. There's such a thing as a collective consciousness, where people are starting to wake up to this reality, and that a small control cabal has been manipulating this planet for the majority of people, the 99%, actually the 99.99%, and until we do, there's a lot of problems on Earth that won't be solved. And I think as we become aware and start to identify this, what you don't know, I believe, can hurt you. And I think it's important that people become awake and aware to the false reality matrix that, we've been falsely indoctrinated into.
Yeah. Now, I got another question that while you was talking, I was thinking of something else. I have seen people who claim that they worked for the government in whatever means. Some were military, some were like scientists or whatever. But they all report like a paycheck type of experience, where they wake up one day and they don't realize they wake up one day and they don't realize what they've been doing for the past 3 or 4 months. Like they have no recollection. Like they were working for the government. They knew they were working for the government, but they wake up one day and they have no idea what they'd been doing for the past 3 or 4 months or whatever. Like on the movie Paycheck.
Dan,
they know how to manipulate memory.
Hey, before y'all go into this here, just want to let y'all know that we got 3-4 minutes left, and I got a question in the chat room.
Okay.
Please.
Well, I'll get off here. Thank you, though.
Hey, appreciate your questions.
Go ahead and answer it. He's still listening on the air, I think.
Yeah, go ahead and talk about whatever I brought up, and then Royce can bring up the question that was in the chat room.
They can manipulate your memory. In fact, when I came across the border with my friend from Mexico after being on Telemundo television with Jaime Maussan, and I talk about this on the Web Matrix, is that I had 3 hours of missing time. We have no idea what happened. and we verified it on numerous sources. So, yeah, memory things happen. They know how to do that. But Royce, what was the question from the chat room?
Okay, it was that document. I had to copy and paste it again. Okay, please ask the guest if he knows the story about the SOS call from North Pole and South Pole at the same time a few years back.
Yeah, the one on the North and South Pole. I'm sorry.
Yeah, an SOS coming in at both the North and South Pole at the same time.
SOS?
Yeah.
You mean like Morse code, like?
That's the way I understood it.
Huh? Yeah, I'm a high-speed coder operator, so I have not heard that. I have no idea on that.
I haven't heard about it either, but maybe she read it somewhere or something, and she's trying to confirm it, or him. It was, I think, Olive, if I remember. There's been some chatting going on since then, but that was the question. I didn't hear nothing about it myself, but I thought maybe you would have. But you're more involved in the research than I am. You know what I mean?
I will research. You know, I'm still learning. Hey, I'm just one top secret witness out of 500. You know, so, and I'm putting the pieces together. You know, just like everybody else can. You know.
We just barely got that one in there.
Yeah, I recommend the webmatrix.net to learn more. Hey, it's been a great show, Royce. Thank you. I hope you're feeling better.
Thanks, Dan. I'm going to work on it, and love to have you back again in the future, as always.
I would love to.
Okay, everybody, y'all have a good day, and I'll